Hey guys, Blake Rodriguez with Dream Come True Canine. And on this episode of Blake's Takes, we're gonna be talking about giving the dog the better option and why the timing of this is so important. What people often suggest and the advice that people often give is when they're doing something inappropriate or taking something inappropriate that they can't eat or they can't chew, remove that, give them something that they can chew or can eat. Now, there is some validity to this. You do want to spend time showing the dog what they should be doing instead. However, a big mistake that a lot of people are making with this, dog trainers included, is not being aware of the timing of when they're choosing to provide that better option or that better choice. Let me explain. If every time I went out and I got around 5 or 6 drinks in, and around that 5th or 6th drink, I started developing beer muscles and I started trying to pick fights with people. Every time I try to pick a fight with somebody, my wife would come over and she'd give me a massage and sit me down and tell me to cool it. Relax, you're okay. You don't need to do that. I happen to like massages. I also don't get them as often as I'd like. I don't know about you, but if every time I'm doing this, my wife is massaging me, providing me with something that I like, while she's showing me what I should be doing instead, I'm going to make the connection that I can get this good thing every time I try to pick fights. Now, if your dog is stealing the TV controller and you're removing that and giving him a marrowbone or a Kong or whatever, it's very likely that the dog's eventually going to start making the connection that anytime I start annoying you, anytime I start biting you, anytime I start biting your ankles, or I go after this, or I go after that, you give me something I can do instead. If you're not correcting or punishing that behavior, and the definition of punishment, again, anything that decreases the likelihood in the dog repeating the behavior. If you're not startling that, if there's no gap between the inappropriate and you're not adding something unpleasant to a dog that is already aware that their choices matter, that's the system that I teach with my dog training. A dog understands, wait a minute, when I do that, I get that. Now here's the thing. You can find whatever that unpleasant stimuli is. The definition of punishment is anything that decreases the likelihood in the dog repeating the behavior. There's only 2 ways that we can punish. And this is something that's really, really important. Reinforcement increases behaviors. So you can spend time using reinforcement to teach what is preferable and what is desirable. But once a dog already knows that and they're still making the mistake, you need to decrease the likelihood in the dog repeating that behavior. That's the definition of punishment. So punishment shouldn't be associated with abuse. Now, when we're looking at this, there are only 2 ways that we can punish a behavior. This is science. You can remove something that is pleasant, but in this context, removing a cookie when the dog wanted the PlayStation controller, or removing affection when the dog wanted something else, it's not going to qualify as punishment or be an effective form of punishment because the dog didn't want that at that moment. So we need to add something unpleasant. That unpleasant thing can be anything and should be anything that your dog deems and finds as unpleasant. For some dogs, it could be being squirted with a water bottle. Some dogs absolutely hate that. Other dogs love it. You might find yourself in a situation where a dog goes, wait a minute, if I do this, you squirt me with water, this is awesome. I'm going to do this every day, right? So you have to be careful with the timing. You might shake a jar of pennies or a jar of rocks. For one dog, that might be unpleasant enough. Got it. You do that every time I do this. Please don't ever shake a jar of rocks again. And in some situations, one form of unpleasant stimuli might be different than what you need for another situation. Sometimes verbally telling your dog no, sometimes a remote collar, sometimes touch. You find what it is that is deemed as unpleasant enough. This is very important. You need to find something that is unpleasant enough for the dog to say, got it. I don't want that if I'm going to do this, right? The consequence for robbing a bank is unpleasant enough for me to try to do it. I'm good. That's what it is. Time is very, very valuable to me, and I don't want to do jail time for something like that, at least not that amount of jail time, right? So what we should be doing is adding that. And once we've caught that dog, once we have that dog that goes, okay, don't do that, got it, don't leave them in limbo. Now what you do is you give them or you show them or you provide them with what they can do instead. Imagine if you had a guest that came over and all you did was tell them no, right? And you said, don't sit there, don't sit there, don't sit there. It's one thing to correct the behavior. This is another thing that people are doing. So you normally have people that are on opposite sides of the spectrum. They spend time teaching the dog what they should be doing over and over and over again, but the dog already knows that. It just needs a decrease in the likelihood of the dog doing this again. It already knows how to make that choice. Then you have people that go, hey, I have to correct this. But now you've corrected, but you haven't shown them what they should be doing instead. Now, you don't want to leave that dog in limbo. I don't want to leave my guest in limbo. No, please don't sit there. No, don't sit there either. Don't sit there. And now what happens is my guest decides to awkwardly stand because he or she doesn't know what to do. When you know damn well that they could be sitting right here and you wouldn't mind that. Don't sit here. You're not allowed to sit there, but you can sit here. Now, instead of leaving your guest or your dog in limbo, once you've effectively punished and decreased the likelihood of the dog repeating that behavior, once you've administered that, don't leave the dog in limbo. Show the dog what he can do. And here's a really important tip. You're going to find that it's going to be easier to tell them what they should be doing instead if what you're telling them is something you guys have already practiced, is something that you guys have already drilled, is something that the dog is already familiar with. It's something that the dog, the way you trained it was fun through a reinforcement-based foundation. They love doing that. So you disagreed now and nope, you can't do that. Maybe you squirted them with that water bottle. They go, whoa, I don't want that. Again, don't do that. Okay, well, what should I do instead? And then you said, well, you can do this. They go, oh, I know how to do that. We do that for feeding exercises, for breakfast and dinner, or just giving you an example. That's awesome. Thanks for letting me know. And now you put yourself in a position where you've been able to provide not only to the dog what they shouldn't be doing. You're a really good friend. Hey, don't do that. That can get you in trouble. You shouldn't be doing that, but you can do this. You also show them how to thrive and how to be successful. Now, if you think that this could be of value of somebody that you're maybe friends with on Facebook or you follow or that follows you on Instagram, share this in your Instagram stories. Share this on your Facebook page. If you believe that maybe there's a friend that could benefit from this, share this on their page or tag them in the comments below. And I will see you guys on the next episode of Blake's Takes.